Bona vesprada. Bé, si vos pareix, comencem. Ara tenim programat, dins de la workshop d'economia valenciana, tenim programada una mesa sobre clústers i districtes industrials. Se sent bé? Faré simplement la introducció, un poc justificar el contingut de la sessió i després li donaré la paraula a Gemma Jimeno, que és la periodista que nos farà la coordinació de tota la sessió. El tema dels clústers dins del que és no sols la workshop d'economia valenciana, sinó també en el que és l'Econlab, este laboratori d'economia que d'alguna manera és la base d'aquestes jornades d'economia valenciana, sempre s'ha preocupat per els clústers. De fet, ha estat un dels dos temes, jo diria, bàsics, junt al finançament o a la manca de finançament, en aquest cas, de l'economia valenciana. I, de fet, ja en la primera edició vam tindre una sessió, una conferència preliminar, una sessió inicial en la qual una professora italiana, Valentina Di Marchi, va fer una presentació genèrica sobre el que significaven els clústers i, sobretot, fixant-se en quin era el cas italià que, com és sabut, tal vegada és el país un poc de referència en el tema dels districtes i dels clústers. L'any passat, en la segona edició del workshop que vam fer a Castelló, li van donar la volta i van presentar ja una mesa, en aquest cas, de persones vinculades a la política de clústers. Volíem una visió que no fos ja exclusivament acadèmica, sinó que volíem una visió de gent que estigués més a prop de les empreses i en aquest cas concret va vindre gent d'acció de la Generalitat de Catalunya, del País Basc i també una persona que havia tingut responsabilitats en l'IMPIVA. Per tant, vam poder fer una mesa en la qual se van debatre polítiques de clúster. En aquesta tercera edició hem optat per intentar una cosa que és complicada, que és combinar les dues visions, l'acadèmica i la tal vegada més pràctica o política. I per això se li va ficar el títol de Repensant els Clústers, Teoria i Pràctica. I per dur endavant esta mesa vam pensar en dues persones des del punt de vista acadèmic, des de la perspectiva acadèmica, que són dos professores d'universitats italianes, Fiorenza Bellusi de la Universitat de Pàdua i Cristina Boari de la Universitat de Bolonya. I junt a aquestes intervencions que necessàriament curtes, que ens proposaran temes concrets, volien complementar-lo en dues visions més pràctiques i per això vam convidar a Paco Corma, que és una persona molt vinculada al sector ceràmic, que actualment té una empresa de consultoria però que té una llarga tradició en temes de gestió d'innovació, creativitat, etc. I també havíem convidat a David Monllor, que venia del clúster del Juguete, d'IBI, però per raons de dificultat climatològica, o sigui, per la pluja, ha tingut que desistir i ja havia començat el viatge que va a València, però ho ha deixat estar un poc per precaució. Per tant, una vegada justificada el contingut d'esta tercera edició de l'espai de clústers en la workshop sobre economia valenciana, ja li dono la paraula a Gemma Jimeno, que és la que farà un poc de coordinadora, donarà la paraula, introduirá a nuestros convidados.
Hola, buenas tardes. Buenas tardes a todos. Bueno, va a tomar la palabra primero Cristina Boari. Cristina Boari es profesora catedrática de Estrategia Empresarial en la Universidad de Bolonya, tal y como ha explicado Xavier. Ha sido decana del Departamento de Administración y coordinadora del programa de doctorado en Gestión de la Universidad de Bolonya, Fue becaria visitante en el Instituto de Investigación Empresarial de la Universidad Itoshubasi de Tokio, en la Escuela Superior de Negocios de la Universidad de Wisconsin, en la Universidad Jaume I de Castellón de la Plana y en la Universidad Federal de Río Grande de Sul de Porto Alegre. Cristina nos va a proporcionar evidencias de modelos innovadores de organización de relaciones interempresariales en grupos industriales. Cristina.
Thank you very much. Buenas tardes. I'm really sorry I have to speak in English. I can understand Spanish, but I cannot speak. I'm sorry for that. So, my presentation today is just to show some new trends in the evolution of one cluster that I know very well, together with other friends and colleagues of mine, and it's the cluster of the packaging machinery industry in Bologna, Modena. This is a leading cluster that passed through the crisis period in a quite successful way, and it's still growing. The companies there export around 90% average everywhere in the world. So this is a kind of successful kind of cluster in Italy. And I just want to show some more recent trends in the evolution of this cluster. On your left, you see the evolution of the relationship between the leading firm, which usually is the company that assemble all the components and build the whole machine, the packaging machine. And you have the suppliers of individual parts and components. And on the left, you see the evolution of the relationship between the leading firm, the final assembling company, and the suppliers. And as you can see, you see that at the beginning the relationship was really of a kind of subordination between the assembling company and the supplier. And as the time went by, we saw that the relationship between the two became tighter, long-term relationship. The suppliers were involved in the innovation process, and the suppliers were all involved in this innovation process together, so they were asked to have a horizontal relationship for that final company. And then we have a fourth stage where we had that some suppliers were selected to coordinate the first level supplier of the step before. So kind of a hierarchical evolution of the company. And all this process was tightly managed by some leading companies. So here we don't have any strong government involvement in the evolution of the firms of the cluster and the cluster itself. So are some key final assemblers that take the initiative and promote this development. So what happened after the crisis? The crisis was very strong for all the companies, of course, but particularly it was particularly strong for the companies, the suppliers that were producing for the automobile industry. Many of the suppliers of this cluster are also producing for the automobile industry. So these suppliers were strongly hit by the crisis of the automobile industry, and they were somehow without a market, or with a very small market, which was the market of the leading firm in the packaging industry. What happened? That some of these leading firms in the packaging industry went to these suppliers and asked them to be involved in a kind of development process. So, this is the first example, which is I was just moving on the other one. This is the first example I want to show you is the fact that in 2009 and 2010 the government created a new institutional form to regulate the relationship between small firms. This was an initiative that was at the aim to increase the size of the company, of the small companies. There was this strong problem of the companies that were really very, very small, and so they tried to find a soft way to convince them to increase the size. So they created a new form, which is called, in Italian is reti di impresa, in English is network of firms. So it was a way, contractual institutional form, that was built to help these companies to join together. And these companies were not the suppliers, well, they were competitors among them. So the idea was to make them easy to join together to produce a larger amount of products, to work together also with other complementary companies. And this initiative was really very interesting because now we have around 5,000 of these networks, 30,000 firms are involved, and I want to show you an example that I was able to follow from the beginning was one of these suppliers that decided to involve other competitors producing components and parts in the electric component and parts for the packaging machinery industry, and they decided to join together, and at the beginning they were together in this network. Then the same supplier decided to make another network of firms in the mechanical and electronic industry, so producing components in the mechanical and electronic industry together. They involved 13 companies together, and these companies were producing or competitive products that were somehow in competition, or products that were complementary. And they now are 15 companies that joined this second network, and the first network of firms merged with the other one. So now we have a huge network involving many companies, and they are able to provide components and put together components in the electrical, mechanical, and electronical let's say industry for the packaging machinery industry. And this is very interesting because they were able to develop innovation together, and to also they were able to patent some of this innovation. So this is a kind of huge success for companies that started very small and very, let's say, weak in a sense. Of course, this kind of network, which was developed within the cluster, was sustained by the leading firm, because the leading firm at that time started to say, well, you are my supplier, you are a very good supplier, but from now on, we cannot afford anymore so many suppliers. We need to reduce the number of suppliers. So do something. Try to organize yourself in order to reduce for us the number of suppliers. And this new institutional form was really a good, let's say, institutional let's say, tool that was very useful to implement this this change in the evolution of the cluster. The other networks is involving different clusters. So it's again about the same cluster, the packaging machinery industry in Bologna, and this time we see the relationship between the leading firm and the supplier. So I was starting before to say that some of these suppliers were also producing for the automobile industry, and the automobile industry suffered a lot from the crisis. So this leading firm went to the supplier and said, okay, I'm working here in this cluster in Far East, and here there are some companies producing some components that might be useful for you. So let's open our book. I show you my cost, you show me your cost, and let's see if you can go there, buy something there, and produce for me more than what you were producing before. So some of these suppliers went there, they selected the local suppliers, so they started to develop this international procurement network involving another cluster, and the leading firm helped them in two ways. First of all, three ways: putting them in contact with the suppliers and with these clusters, where there was a huge investment in automation, so there were very high level of automation in these companies. And the second, they invested in a small minority investment within the supplier. And third, they covered the cost of factoring. So the supplier could go to the bank, discount the receipt, the invoice, receive the money, and the cost of the factoring was supported by the leading firm. With the money they get from the banks, they were able to invest inside. So they invested internally in automating the innovation process. So the Industry 4.0 was very much implemented during through this kind of activities. So this is one example, and this is a second stage of the same example with the same suppliers. We see that these suppliers started to grow, to invest in automation. They created very well structured and automated companies and factories, and they started to internalize some of the activities that were before starting to buy in this cluster, but at the same time they were able to invest in other suppliers. So you can see that at a certain moment we have this supplier that invests in companies in this cluster, trying to link this company to them. And another interesting thing is that the leading firm in Bologna put them in contact with other competitors, so competitors of this company, so other company producing packaging machinery industries in the world, and they put this supplier in contact with them and allowed them, forced somehow the supplier to build components for that company too. There is a rule of 40% for some company, the largest company, they put the rule of this supplier can produce for them up to 40% of their production. Okay, so this is a kind of is a development which is involving both the procurement, so the international procurement of these companies, and also the market of these companies. So we have these networks that are involving at the same time foreign suppliers and also foreign customers, which is a kind of innovation for them. They were producing only for the internal market. Okay, so this is just to show you some more recent evolution of the clusters, where you can see, not surprisingly, that they are opening, and not surprising that the development passed through the development of suppliers, you know, because already these companies are very, very well structured, very, very much developed. But the problem is that these ones are really sometimes very weak, and so they need to find some constraints, some elements that push them to work in that direction. And these elements, of course, one is the crisis that is really working very well in this situation. And the second one is the role of these companies, and also some role of the government that, let's say, structure this management tool, the rated Impresa, in a way that was somehow making them easier to organize and to coordinate. Too long.
Se me ha olvidado comentaros antes que primero vamos a hacer una ronda de intervenciones y después abriremos un pequeño debate para que todos podamos participar. Ahora es el turno de Fiorenza Bellusi. Es profesora catedrática de Estrategia y Gestión de la Innovación y directora del Máster en Negocios Internacionales en el Departamento de Economía y Gestión de la Universidad de Pàdua. Sus áreas de interés incluyen la gestión de la innovación y la creatividad, las industrias creativas, los modelos teóricos sobre la difusión de la innovación a través de los guardianes, estudios de innovación abierta y negocios internacionales y el impacto de la globalización en las economías locales. Ha publicado más de 170 artículos y libros. Su trabajo reciente es el volumen escrito con Luigi Orsi de la Universidad de Milán, publicado en 2016, Innovación, alianzas y redes en entornos de alta tecnología. Fiorenza hablará sobre las diferentes modalidades dentro del ciclo de vida del clúster, que se deriva del proceso de ingreso de empresas multinacionales.
Thank you very much for your brilliant presentation. Yes, I will try to concentrate my interest in discussing the cluster issue with you on two topics. The first is the variety of cluster trends. So, in fact, we are in front of a system that was described 100 years ago as a system involving small firms becoming so efficient like a large firm. So there was a Marshallian idea that also small firms can grow instead of emerging for this at that time. And they can cooperate and then arrive to a larger size like large firms. So for this reason, Marshall opened a space to the existence of small firms. But nowadays, we have clusters that have developed inside large firms. And in some articles I talk about homegrown multinationals. So we are confronting model of growth in which multinational created in a cluster, they emerge as an important actor in the cluster. And particularly I know the case of the Marmor cluster in Spain, where just one firm resulted as a process of concentration. So you have a cluster that emerge in one big large firm. On the contrary, in the same sector in marble production, we have a cluster in Italy, in the Veneto region, where the cluster grew, firms became larger, but no one took so big power of inventing new materials, creating new collaboration with clients, and so on. And so the cluster remained a kind of aggregate cluster. If you look at the global level, you have clusters that didn't develop at all. They were declining, and I think this is a matter very important to study, why cluster decline and other grows. Which cluster grows? It grows only supercluster that contains agents able to reach the global stage, to reach global clients, to absorb global technology, to produce breaking innovation, so important innovation. And you have a lot of clusters like this, because Silicon Valley is a cluster like this, that went to a continuous renewal, because if you think of the cluster started in electronics for defense, then evolved into electronics for civil application like cellular and so on. Then it went to ICT applied to new business models like Google or Facebook, in which you have a particular capability of using technology to create new services and to create new models of firms. Like now, where new firms are developing, not in Europe, but very much in California. You still have Uber, where Uber is. You still have not just Facebook, but you have also Twitter. You have also for the hotel, the alternatives model of the hotels. You have Airbnb and so on. They are all in the shallow of the cluster. So cluster is able to make a fantastic path renewal in which new sectors are entering quite secretly, but then they became very important. Nowadays, the software or the service sector in Silicon Valley is more important than the production of computer, the production of, say, hardware. So, and what is interesting that California, but also Spain, they give space to homegrown multinationals. So there are no anymore conflicts between small firms and large firms, but large firms and multinationals are in the cluster. And they play sometimes a very important role, positive role, because they bring new knowledge, novel knowledge in the cluster. So they are able to, as we saw this morning, they are able to, for instance, in the case of Spain and the footwear cluster, to help to develop new logistics form to sell products. And so multinationals are very advanced, but sometimes cluster firms are more good in producing novel technologies. So you have important contribution of multinational entering the cluster for the survival of the cluster. But sometimes not. And sometimes multinational entering the class with a very aggressive policy of buying the best firms. That's the history of Riviera del Brenta. Riviera del Brenta is a very important Italian cluster in furniture. The most elegant shoes produced in the world are there. But nowadays, two groups, the one around Prada, the one around Louis Vuitton, have bought it, or they force first to become their subcontractors. So 60-70% of the production of the Riviera del Brenta is in the hands of multinational. So it's not just one presence, it's the dominance. So that's made the difference between presence and dominance. Also, I heard this morning that also Zara entering the footwear cluster. So you see, multinational are using the important knowledge produced in the cluster, but they are re-elaborating, and it's very difficult now to understand if this is good or bad for the cluster. Are they adding something and are taking more than adding, and so on? We have to study this very much. But clearly, we don't have anymore in front of us simple cluster with small firms and the Marshallian externalities. And no, we have very different models in front of us. The second point that I would like to reflect on is related to cluster policy. Are still actual? Do we need a cluster policy? Are cluster independent? Are cluster just related to spontaneous growth? Well, in Europe there are a lot of experience on cluster policy, and I'm afraid they are more effective, more developed in Northern Europe than in South of Europe, where we have clusters. So cluster policy are very developed where clusters are not existent and are perhaps created by policy, while in Italy and Spain we don't have much experience on cluster policy in the last 20 years. And talking with my Northern Europe colleague, we discuss a lot about how, through policy, you can help a cluster to go beyond path extension, but go through path renewal or new path creation. And this can be very important to the successful life of cluster. So path renewal can be related to developing related activities or unrelated activities. If policy help to force related activities, they help the ramification. So you go to build new niches, like in packing machinery, you go from food packaging to health packaging. So you have a new type of industry involved and so on. And this is clearly a bit conservative, but open new markets. In Montebelluna, we move from ski boot, as David knows, to geox, which help the development of sport shoes, sport city shoes. So you see related varieties. So you just have in common the technical knowledge, but you apply to new products. And that's very important that the policy help this process. Try to recombine different types of knowledge, different types of market, using the mechanism of the spontaneous reorganization of knowledge in different sectors. Or you have another very interesting process, unrelated variety. So you have a path that build platforms to combine different type of knowledge. Like in northern countries, you have a platforms where Volkswagen and other companies related to engineering, Royce and so on, they develop a type of new knowledge, new application that can be also used by typical engineering firms. So you have to create a new common knowledge that can be, or take in the case of then in the Danish countries you have unrelated varieties developed, like cluster developing in food industry new type of yogurts that they are developed because you have biotech that produce new enzyme. So you have from different type of science and competence a re-elaboration that gives rise to new product. Or you have, as in Spain, ICT helping footwear cluster first to sell online. So you very distant from, so don't, I think policy must do the same things. And finally, I hope that you, with me, agree on the fact that policy make now not more help the individual firm to do innovation, but they have to sponsor new platforms where knowledge is combined and is distributed. And particularly, you have also to develop local cluster, inventing new typologies in the service sector, which is more than 80% of our economy. So you are still very traditional, you are still thinking only on manufacturing, but take the case of Matera, with smart spec policy and being applied to develop, let's say, the traditional heritage industry with new policy, new of events. So you have now Matera being the capital of culture in 1999 in Europe, where, let's say, the primitive has been sold in a cluster way, organizing tourism, organizing new event, organizing arts, organizing the new appreciation of some architectural and some very ancient ruins and ancient churches, to give rise to a new sustainability model of activities. Okay.
Muchas gracias, Fiorenza. Ahora va a tomar la palabra Paco Corma, consultor e innovación del sector cerámico, trabaja la innovación con clientes de diferentes sectores y tamaños y la contempla como algo transversal a cualquier disciplina, actividad o tipología de organización. Paco nos hablará sobre estrategias de innovación y las empresas innovadoras en el sector cerámico. A partir de este enfoque y teniendo en cuenta la complejidad actual del clúster de la cerámica de La Plana, identificará retos futuros.
Muchas gracias, Gemma. Me he preparado como una especie de índice de los temas que quería tocar desde un aspecto práctico, pues de un profesional que a finales de los 70, lo cual solo indica que uno se hace muy mayor, pues empezó a trabajar en el clúster y el primer trabajo que tuve fue en Reus, en una industria cerámica. Y el segundo fue en Plasencia, en otra industria cerámica, provincia de Cáceres. Y allí descubrí lo que era trabajar fuera del núcleo, diríamos, central de producción cerámica que estaba en Castellón, porque al otro lado del teléfono siempre había un proveedor que estaba en Castellón. Entonces, para cualquier cosa teníamos que o bien llamar a Castellón o coger el coche e ir a por un recambio a Castellón. Llego a Castellón ya a trabajar y llega un momento que uno se entera que está trabajando en un distrito y no lo sabía porque no existía, ese concepto no existía. Si bien es cierto, y haciendo honor a la casa en la que estamos, que ya había publicaciones de la Facultad de Económicas en las que se hablaba del distrito cerámico a principios de los años 80. Pero los profesionales no éramos propiamente conscientes de que estábamos trabajando en un distrito, sino que estábamos allí. Pero es bueno saber lo que se teoriza alrededor de los distritos, porque los propios profesionales, las empresas, cuando conocen, diríamos, la teoría que se esconde detrás, bueno, no se esconde, está, que está detrás del concepto distrito, pueden sacar muchísimas enseñanzas. Si hablamos de un antes, una ahora y un después, estos tres conceptos, antes, ahora y después, se mueven con el tiempo. Yo he hablado del antes, en principios de los 80, y pensaba que el después pues sería ahora. Sin embargo, el ahora es el presente, y ese presente ha cambiado mucho desde los años 80. Los años 80 fueron importantes, descubríamos que éramos un distrito industrial, nos ayudó muchísimo la política en aquel entonces de los institutos tecnológicos, porque nos dio, diríamos, sentimiento de que éramos un distrito industrial. Pero ahora, el ahora, que entonces era posible futuro, no lo adivinábamos, no sabíamos que íbamos a llegar aquí. Y esta situación actual ha cambiado mucho con respecto a lo que pensábamos, en todos los aspectos. En los aspectos de lo que es el conocimiento, trabajábamos muy pegados a lo que era el saber hacer propio de allí, de la zona. El distrito cerámico, como muchos de ustedes sabrán, nace alrededor de la localización de materias primas, ni siquiera alrededor del conocimiento, el conocimiento nace en paralelo, con lo cual diríamos hay un componente territorial de presencia de materias primas que va, diríamos, ampliándose con un saber hacer de las personas. Y alrededor de esto pues, se va generando cada vez una aglomeración mayor. Entonces, eso ha cambiado y esos artesanos han pasado a ser personas con mayor cualificación, el conocimiento es más amplio, disponemos de apoyo de nuestros proveedores tecnológicos, de maquinaria, de esmaltes, de azulejos, los centros de conocimiento, como es la universidad, centros tecnológicos, Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, y eso hace que también haya mejorado conceptos de moda hoy, no de moda hace simplemente 5 años, como era la innovación. Entonces hay una cierta, digo cierta, con minúscula, demanda de aspectos relacionados con la innovación, entendiendo la innovación como otra forma de pensar cómo puede ser el futuro o que vayamos consiguiendo hacer ese futuro. Eso están cambiando, es decir, no hay como unas barreras que delimiten hasta tal año, tal cosa, hasta tal año, sino que es, diríamos, un fluir de las cosas que están sucediendo. Tenemos mayor acceso al conocimiento de forma sistemática, las empresas son cada vez más innovadoras, cada vez gestionan mejor sus procesos internos, pero sistemáticamente aparecen, diríamos, factores que distorsionan ese presente, es decir, es un cambio continuo. Esta mañana he tenido la suerte de estar en la sesión en la que los compañeros del Vinalopó pues, han hablado de la experiencia de la presencia de una multinacional como es Inditex Zara en el clúster del calzado, y este es un fenómeno que sucede en ese clúster, pero sucede en otros clústeres. En Castellón estamos asistiendo a el crecimiento por absorción de empresas azulejeras, unas que compran a otras, y hay unas cuantas que son ya muy grandes, multinacionales que llegan al sector, no tanto en azulejos, pero sí en esmaltes y en maquinaria, y este fenómeno era, por decirlo de una manera, impensable hace 10 años. Luego es un factor que entonces era futuro y ahora es presente y que cambia la forma en la que las empresas y los propios profesionales pues, estamos inmersos en el clúster como lo pensamos. Y además, en estas circunstancias cambiantes, no todos los actores avanzan a la misma velocidad. Es decir, se está produciendo lo mismo que en la sociedad en general, un diferencial cada vez más grande entre las empresas que llevan una velocidad paralela a estos cambios y las empresas, y por ende profesionales, que no llevan ese camino, con lo cual se está produciendo un distanciamiento entre competidores, tanto empresas como profesionales. De manera que estamos asistiendo a cada vez empresas más grandes, más preparadas, más cualificadas, con más recursos, con personas más formadas y una cola, vamos a decir así, de un montón de empresas pues, que no llevan el mismo ritmo, porque no pueden llevar el mismo ritmo. Y todo eso pues, nos lleva a lo que era un poco el motivo, ¿no?, de esta mesa redonda, y es que tenemos que repensar un poco lo que son estos distritos, pues desde a final de los 90, ¿no?, que aparece la palabra clúster, hasta hoy pues, ha cambiado, y los tenemos que repensar. Y a mí se me había ocurrido, cuando me preparaba la mesa, pues diríamos, una función muy multivariable. Como por desgracia sucede en la vida real, las cosas pues tienen muchas variables. Si nosotros tenemos un antes, una hora y un después, como pensar en futuro, como estamos pensando en futuro, como nos han dicho, tenemos un antes, una hora y un después, también podemos pensar en que dentro de cada uno de estos momentos de tiempo podemos tener un dentro, lo que es el propio distrito, los actores actuales. Podemos pensar en una interfase entre los actores de dentro y los anexos cercanos, y podemos pensar incluso en aquellos que están más alejados, de los cuales hoy en día ya los distritos industriales están tomando conocimiento. Por lo tanto, ya tendríamos, diríamos, dos niveles, y dentro de este nivel de dentro, interfase y externo, tenemos actores fundamentales que no podemos olvidar, como son las empresas, las personas, el conocimiento, los centros de conocimiento, etc. Por lo tanto, repensar el distrito es complicado. Es complicado, pero no imposible, para eso están los profesionales que se dedican a ello, ¿no? Pero sí que es necesario, por decir de una manera, decir, oye, esto ha cambiado, está cambiando, tenemos que poner en marcha una forma de pensar, un método, un algo, para ver cómo lo interpretamos. De forma que marquemos o seamos capaces de marcar tendencias y en base a esas tendencias poder, diríamos, diseñar políticas concretas. Yo he tenido la suerte de trabajar mucho con el distrito cerámico de Holanda en Maastricht, y no existe, o ya no existe, esto existía y hoy ya no existe. Y hacían de todo una cosa en pequeñito, como Castellón, pero en pequeñito. Bueno, aquello desapareció porque, entre otras cosas, en Holanda, en Maastricht, tenían claro que la industria cerámica es un gran consumidor de recursos no renovables, por ejemplo. Aparte de que es un producto que resultaba caro de producir en el norte de Europa, en Holanda. Por lo tanto, no tenemos más remedio, aunque sea solo por supervivencia, porque igual nos afecta, somos consumidores de recursos no renovables, disculpen, como que los costes que tenemos son elevados, por lo tanto no tenemos más remedio que por simple supervivencia repensarlo. Y para repensarlo, con todas estas, diríamos, efecto multivariable, no podemos olvidar otro factor importante. En nuestra comunidad, los distritos están ubicados territorialmente de una forma muy concreta. En el caso de Castellón ha llegado a ser monocultivo, hoy ya no tanto, pero ha sido un monocultivo. De hecho, es la principal fuente, diríamos, de puestos de trabajo y de riqueza el sector cerámico. Por lo tanto, dentro de este factor de repensar los distritos, tenemos que incorporar la variable territorio, personas, y qué va a suceder con ese territorio y con esas personas que van a sobrar a mansalva. Y estos eran los puntos que tenía, y que mi intención era abrir interrogantes para someter, diríamos, a la discusión conjunta el tema y a sus preguntas. Por mi parte, Gemma, nada más. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Paco. Pues ahora vamos a abrir el turno de debate. No sé si tenemos alguna pregunta desde el público. ¿Hay alguien que quiera lanzar una pregunta? ¿Tú mismo? Pues sale. Y lo tienes todo claro, ¿o no?
Bueno, felicidades por felicidades por este interesante mesa redonda con 5 primeros espadas en el tema y gente muy cualificada que nos ha expuesto de una forma brillante un claro panorama sobre los clústeres y los distritos industriales. Y yo mi pregunta va justo con lo último que acaba de decir ahora Paco, sobre los recursos humanos en los clústeres. O sea, una pieza clave en los clústeres y en los distritos industriales han sido las personas, desde los inicios de Marshall, siguiendo Becatini, Michael Porter y demás. Pero ahora los clústeres han globalizado, se han internacionalizado, y estamos asistiendo a que cada vez hay una mayor presencia de empresas multinacionales, bien que nacen en el propio clúster y tienen subsidiarias fuera, o bien multinacionales que vienen fuera a los clústeres. Y tú acabas de decir que en los clústeres sobran personas. Mi pregunta va por ahí, ¿no? Mi pregunta, ¿cuál es el futuro o dicho de otra manera, en la situación actual que están los clústeres, ¿cuál es el futuro de los recursos humanos de los clústeres?
Gracias. ¿Tu nombre, por favor? Gracias, Paco. Bueno, la definición de clúster, el autor, hablaba de conglomerados industriales. Se sobreentiende que en los conglomerados industriales hay personas, pero no se citan propiamente. Es un tema, digamos, muy focalizado en la empresa. Bueno, pero entrando de lleno. Una realidad de los últimos, yo diría 5 años, no más, es el continuo crecimiento en el de Castellón de las empresas. Unas adquieren a otras, con lo cual crecen en azulejos. Vienen además fondos de inversión. Las empresas son cada vez más grandes. No vienen empresas multinacionales propiamente dicho al sector cerámico, no es un tema llamativo. Sí que lo es en otros sectores. Con lo cual diríamos, entramos en empresas cada vez más grandes y un tema. Por otro lado, existe una cosa que se llama la Asociación de Técnicos Cerámicos, que tiene una gran importancia en el sector. Estamos todos asociados y ha sido fuente, diríamos, de intercambio de conocimiento tácito continuamente. Bien, fíjate que antes era relativamente fácil irte al bar a tomar el café e intercambiar conocimiento de este estilo, cada vez es más complicado, porque las empresas más grandes son más celosas de su propio conocimiento. Cuando yo vendo un servicio genérico, que llamo al mercado, las empresas prefieren comprarlo in company. Es decir, se van cerrando. Las empresas tradicionalmente, en aquellos años, yo diría 90, contrataban mucho y casi exclusivamente con el Instituto Tecnológico de Cerámica. Hoy en día se contratan más fuera del instituto que no en el propio instituto. Diríamos, motivo principal, entre otros, pues que son más celosas de su conocimiento y contratan fuera. Diríamos, allí donde no queda claro dónde contratan. ¿Dónde quiero llegar? Quiero llegar a que, eso es una opinión que no puedo demostrar científicamente, que con empresas cada vez más grandes, todo apunta que van a ser más celosas de su conocimiento, se van a encerrar en sí mismas más y sus profesionales se van a formar dentro, pero no van a interactuar. Con lo cual, si tú, como nos decía el compañero del Vinalopó, te contrata una empresa de aquellas, dentro es posible que tengas una trayectoria profesional. Pero los que se queden fuera, y son la mayoría de las empresas pequeñas, se va a seguir produciendo esa separación de formación de los propios profesionales. Luego vamos camino de una gran formación en algunos profesionales y aún, diríamos, una base de la pirámide cada vez más amplia de personas, diríamos, que se quedarán atrás. Cuando digo atrás es en conocimientos y en salario.
¿Alguna pregunta más? Allí al fondo a la derecha.
Yo estaba en la misma sesión que estabas tú y Lorenza y Fiorenza, y me ha llamado mucho la atención. ¿Tú entiendes el castellano, Fiorenza? ¿Mi capisci en español? Ok. Perfecto. Yo estaba en la sesión que estabas tú y me ha llamado mucho la atención que en el caso del Vinalopó lo que ha ocurrido es que se ha instalado Inditex. A mí me parece inconcebible que eso pueda ocurrir hoy cuando es un distrito que para mí es uno de los que estaban, entre comillas, muriendo con menos posibilidades por la competencia china desde dentro y que pues estaba produciéndose lo que en un momento dado se llamó chinización del distrito, que precisamente Mauricio Mistri escribió un artículo de eso y me tocó traducirlo a mí y sufrí mucho con aquel artículo. Entonces, en ese sentido, a mí me parece chocante que eso esté ocurriendo y lo que siempre pasa en el distrito de Castellón es que todos los santos años, cuando viene una crisis, cada 10 años, cada 5, el distrito se va, adiós, 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 y vuelve a crecer con más fuerza, se duplica y se triplica. Entonces yo no lo veo tan negativo eso, viendo lo que ha pasado con Inditex, que para mí ha sido una súper sorpresa, porque no me parece, digamos, de recibo que Inditex se instale allí. Para mí tiene más sentido que se vaya a otro sitio más barato, incluso con la misma tecnología, que ya existen, digamos, en países, no sé, como India, por ejemplo, sin ir más lejos. Gracias.
Para mí no es sorprendente que Inditex, bueno, es aquello de a toro pasado, ¿no? Pero no sé, es decir, es un producto que no tiene en su gama y que quiere producir. Y tenemos que tener en cuenta que los costes, por ejemplo, los costes del producto cerámico fabricado en Castellón es competitivo en todo el mundo, en China, en India, en Turquía. Es decir, que estamos en un nivel tecnológico y de capacidad de producción y de saber hacer que hace que el producto sea competitivo. Por lo tanto, diríamos, te puedes ubicar allí donde quieras, en el caso de Zara e Inditex, pero directamente a donde esté el conocimiento para ser productivo el primer día. ¿Correcto? En el caso cerámico de España, no así en Italia, no se está dando. Somos centros productores, como digo, competitivos en cualquier parte. Por otro lado, no estoy de acuerdo con que viene el toro, que nos quejamos cuando viene la crisis y que cuando pasa son ciclos, diríamos, muy asociados a lo que es la economía y, por lo tanto, la construcción, ¿no? Pero, diríamos, ahora no se ha duplicado ni triplicado, se ha quedado por abajo y en la cuneta se han quedado muchísima gente parada. Cuando digo muchísimas, más que mucha. Por lo tanto, diríamos, ese es un nuevo escenario y ese nuevo escenario hay que repensar el clúster, porque es una realidad. Es decir, no va a volver a crecer el doble, es imposible, no cabe, no hay recursos para ello. Por lo tanto, en esas nuevas circunstancias tenemos que repensarlo.
Well, the two districts we were discussing this morning, Castellón and Sessuolo, are very competitive. But in the meantime, when we see are very competitive, we don't take care of the fact that the production has been growing in the last decades in emerging countries, China and Brazil. So our firms are competitive, but don't sell there because there are national producers that cover the markets, not tiles produced in Castellón or in Italy. So, okay, the problem are cost. So this product costs a lot to be transported, and it's not anymore convenient for the economy to move tiles from Spain to Brazil and China, and from Italy to Brazil and China. So all our firms give as something obvious that they will not cover the new markets because they with difficulty can be there. So we have small firms in our two districts that are not really aggressive in international business. They are not aggressive. And what is happening is that cluster firms are selling technology to emerging countries firms. So because low cost of production, of labor and so on, in future other countries will grow, and not Italy and Spain, but we can maintain clearly the low, not the low quality, but the high quality in Europe and perhaps United States and Canada, but not in the world, not in the world. So this is a problem because large multinationals, they are growing now using through alliances the technology produced in Spain and in Italy are covering those markets. So there are, as I showed this morning, there are a lot of companies in South America and in China and India that are now developing low-cost product with our technology. And we, in one sense, we offer them for free this technology because it's related to the alliances. So if I buy machinery, if I buy technician, if I transfer tacit knowledge, because I ask them to control my production with a very sophisticated ICT tools. Now you can control the machinery from Italy to see if something is wrong and immediately make intervention there. So what I'm saying is that perhaps our district need a shift into new creativity, which is a new way of selling tiles. So maybe I just think about, but maybe we have to produce new tiles, okay? Italy now is very much producing big tiles. This was in one sense the new business model that emerged. So the shape of the tile. And in this sense, we need perhaps a new partnership with architects. we have in this change in footwear leather district in Arzignano. So they start to have a big warehousing, and with architects selling immediately new pieces of leather for design in house renewal. So you see, I think that the situation is good because we have a recovery in both districts, but we don't have, in my view, the merging of new business model, of new relationship, of creativity, not just in the product, but in the organization of selling, considering also e-commerce. Why they don't use e-commerce?
Right. I agree about what is happening with the creativity, the need to rethink the districts. But in my case, for example, I was in China, in Changchun, and they produce 30% of the cars in the world. Just in this small city, or this is not small, it's very big, in Changchun. So there is Volkswagen, for example. They don't give any technology. They place the technology. They have the alliance with the companies, with the international companies, Chinese companies, and so on. And they have to be at least 51% Chinese property, of course. And the technology is there, but I normally, when I am at the airport, I meet many people from Castellón, from Sassuolo, that they are traveling to fit something in Indonesia, in China, because they don't have the technology, they are not prepared to deal with the daily life of the factory. So you sell the technology, you sell the whole factory, key in your hand, but they need you, so they depend on the district at the end. That's my thinking.
Yes, Cristina?
Can I just add something concerning this? So, for example, in terms of cost and the risk that the clusters in some way is going to die because of the decreasing cost and the competition on cost, and the fact that, for example, in Italy we had some cluster, for example, in Prato, where the competition now is in the hand of Chinese people, and they are producing completely different things as compared to before, but they are there, and the whole cluster disappear. But for example, if you think at the example I was producing before, this packaging industry is competing worldwide, and they are considered number 1 or number 2 in the world with German, so they somehow are more or less on the same level. The Italian products has the fame to be more adapting, the more precise, more able to really fit the needs of the customers. So they cost a little bit more, but the competition on price is very, very high. So that's why this company, for example, somehow suggested to the supplier to go there and look how much was the cost of producing certain components in that place because of the investment that they did and so on. So the idea is that, of course, this company, the final leading company, they are investing in China. They are buying companies, full companies there. So they are buying competitors there. They are buying competitors everywhere in the Far East, in all the emerging, in Brazil. And they try to somehow also to build somehow small cluster around the new companies they've been investing, So that's why these small suppliers are also investing in these clusters around the world, because they are following the final company. So but again, it's really important to see in this case the role of this leading company. So the final company are really the largest. They keep on buying and growing. They are investing a lot in innovation. They are investing a lot in renewing the people that work inside. So they are really trying to maintain this very high level. And this effort is not only their effort, it's an effort that forced them to bring also some suppliers with them, because they need suppliers, because this product is a systemic product. You need all your suppliers, and you need that your suppliers are at the top. So again, the cost is key even there, and the problem that you face in some clusters are addressed in this cluster with this investment by the leading company abroad, and trying to push abroad also some key suppliers that are willing to invest with them.
I completely agree.
Quería añadir una cosa en la misma dirección. Actualmente, diríamos, a nivel de lo que es innovación, en general, en cualquier, diríamos, rama de actividad, las tendencias fundamentales en innovación son dos. Personalizar el producto o el servicio, personalizar y logística. Diríamos, todos los grandes, diríamos, estudiosos de la innovación están aquí. Llevemos eso a nuestros clústeres, ¿vale? Tenemos productos. En los clústeres Comunidad Valenciana al final hay un producto que se fabrica en una instalación. Pero la personalización y la logística no necesariamente están en la instalación, en el producto. Por lo tanto, siguiendo este hilo conductor, podríamos pensar que en ese repensar del clúster nos encontraríamos en un futuro con centros productivos que fabrican cosas, pero que están diseñadas para ser personalizadas y que van a ser distribuidas en otros centros. Entonces, eso tiene sus implicaciones positivas, negativas, que hay que estudiar, pero que nos obligan a repensarlo. Yo en un artículo que firmaba Xavier ayer, nos hacía una pregunta que decía: en una economía tan global como la actual, ¿sigue el conocimiento adherido al territorio? Esta yo creo que es una pregunta que ya casi estamos en condiciones de contestar, y yo diría que ya no. Yo creo que ya no está adherido al territorio, está flotando. ¿Qué está adherido al territorio? La factoría, la fábrica, donde se produce. Pero el conocimiento para personalizar y para distribuir ya no está asociado al territorio. Por lo tanto, dentro de esa bola de cristal de futuro, yo creo que ese es el camino que estamos llegando, ¿no? A centros productivos en cualquier parte, en este caso, pues donde están, con lo cual es más barato, y todo lo que está alrededor puede estar en la nube. Lo cual no es ser pesimista. Diríamos, es analizar un poco en la situación en la que yo creo que estamos.
Cristina, ¿ibas a añadir algo más? ¿O Fiorenza, que te he visto antes?
No.
¿Alguna pregunta más? Vale, pues yo le quería preguntar a Paco. Él ha puesto sobre la mesa que hay unas circunstancias cambiantes, que todos los actores no avanzan a la misma velocidad. ¿Qué deberíamos hacer para conseguir que estos avanzaran a la vez? ¿Qué ayudas necesitaríamos? ¿Cómo podría intervenir la administración para que esto se pudiera conseguir?
Gemma, ¿tú eres administración?
No.
Ah, vale.
No.
Vamos a ver, yo cuando me refería a los actores también incluía dentro de lo que es el clúster todos los que intervienen. Por ejemplo, los que son proveedores de tecnología, bien en forma maquinaria o bien en conocimiento en productos, digamos, esmaltes, fritas, colores, aditivos, etc. Estos actores que hacen de la personalización y de la logística su punta de lanza en innovación, van muchísimo más a prisa que otro actor, que es el fabricante de azulejos, que se ha dejado raptar, entre comillas, por el conocimiento de aquellos proveedores. Ha delegado casi totalmente lo que es el aporte de conocimiento en aquellos otros. ¿Qué podríamos hacer, por ejemplo, en ese caso? Claro, eso pasa por tener personas formadas, muy formadas dentro de las empresas de azulejos, que sean buenos interlocutores de las empresas proveedoras de tecnología. Por lo tanto, eso es un tema que tienen que plantearse las propias estrategias de las empresas. Si yo quiero estar competitivo y tener interlocución, tengo que tener personas preparadas. ¿Qué hacen los competidores? Pues cada vez tener personas más preparadas para ser buenos interlocutores de esos proveedores y sacar ventaja competitiva. Lo mismo sucede con el actor, diríamos, centros de conocimiento, universidad, institutos, consejo. estos para, diríamos, interaccionar con conocimiento tienen que tener al otro lado de la mesa personas preparadas. Sí que las tienen en las empresas de proveedoras de tecnología, no las tienen tanto en las empresas de azulejos, no las tienen tanto, y este es un problema. Y este es un problema, diríamos, de, yo diría, medio recorrido, que conforme las empresas crezcan, deberían cuidar, mimar esos recursos humanos en cuanto a formación. Yo creo que no estamos todavía en condiciones de saber si se está produciendo o no, con lo cual serían impresiones, porque pueden destinar más recursos a esa formación interna. Las pequeñas difícilmente lo podrán hacer. No sé si he contestado, Gemma.
Sí. Muchas gracias, Paco.
Luis.
I was curious about what you thought about this kind of contracts, this tool that the administration has provided to the providers to make these partnerships or these soft alliances. I don't know. So I would like to know a little bit more about this process. I mean, how it became from. It was an initiative from the administration, or it was a demand by the leading firms. So know a little bit more about this, because I think it seems like an interesting tool, but I also think that it's difficult to implement. So and apparently it has been a success. So yeah, I don't know if you can just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, I think it's an interesting story because it was started by the entrepreneurs. So it was the National Association of the Entrepreneurs that realized that there was this problem of the smallness of the majority of firms in Italy. So the fact that they were small and they were not willing to cooperate with anybody, apart from with the supplier or the, let's say, customer. But the idea to cooperate with other small companies doing similar things, or even to merge with them, was something that was not possible. So they decided to think to something very soft that could allow to the entrepreneur to feel completely free, but at the same time to join with others to address a certain aim to be reached in a short term or short-long term, because these contracts are they have a term. So they will say, okay, for example, we can join to be more international together, and this is something that will finish in 5 or 6 years. Okay, it's a kind of a project. So they join together. So of course it's very important the selection phase. So these entrepreneurs must find some other that are interested to join them in a project, And so they have a term, and they allow to be free. So you just coordinate among yourself for that project. And of course, it depends very much. You need some visionary entrepreneurs. So at least one should be visionary. So the cases I know, there is one entrepreneur and maybe other 14, but the one is actually the leader. The one that has a vision, that understands that if they don't do that, they are going to lose the customers. So because the customers were saying, pay attention, for example, in the packaging, we are not going to buy anymore from the, I don't know, 10,000 suppliers. We are going to reduce by 10. Okay, so this is a very strong, let's say, challenge for them. Some of them perceived, and they had the capability to involve other entrepreneurs. And of course, there is a selection, and the process was interesting because it was, let's say, addressed by the entrepreneurs. So it was something coming from inside the community of the firms. And then they went to the government, and it was a kind of lucky situation at the time that they met people that understood that could be done something could be done. And so they organized and they designed this new, let's say, institutional form, which is very light, very light. You don't even need to have a shared ownership on something. So it's really something like a contract with some aim. Of course, they made this institutional form, and then they started to promote in a very, very let's say, very strong effort at the local level. So, for example, the Association of Entrepreneurs in Emilia-Romagna, they made many meetings with entrepreneurs promoting the tool, and of course they started to show some initial successful case, and they toured Italy to show what they were doing. So there was really a lot of effort in trying to show the effects and the possibility that the tool was able to.
Is this a regional administration tool?
And national.
No, national.
It's national. It's a national law.
Yeah, national law, and it's but it's very simple. You know, it's a contract. But you know, I had the opportunity to meet some of these entrepreneurs, and it was really nice because some of them, they're really people with a very small company, very simple people, but they realized that that particular entrepreneur was someone trustable, and they sometimes they may kind of emerge, you know. In some situation they merge. At the end they merge, and if you talk with them, some of them say, "Oh, we are doing this now. We are, I don't know, 10 companies. I'm sure not everybody will stay, but at the end we will merge." So the idea that they start to grow, you know, and to develop also more capability in terms of managerial capability, organization, and so on. They are investing a lot in innovation. Some of them are making startups organized within this network. So it's really it's a tool that enables many different many different possibilities, and it's really an interesting thing.
A mí ahora me gustaría hacer un comentario respecto a lo que ha dicho Paco y hacerles una pregunta a Fiorenza y a Cristina. Claro que no me gustaría contradecir o tener una opinión distinta de cualquiera de nuestros invitados, pero el tema que yo creo que es importante, de la adherencia al territorio, del conocimiento, yo lo veo desde otro punto de vista. Incluso en los ejemplos que se han dado, tanto la aparición de multinacionales en clústeres tradicionales, como es el caso de Inditex en Alicante, o ese proceso de fusiones, adquisiciones que se está dando en la cerámica, se mantiene. A pesar de eso, y aunque cambian las reglas del juego, y podemos hablar de qué consecuencias puede tener, lo que sí que se mantiene es justamente la localización, la importancia del territorio. Es decir, cuando las empresas, digamos, crecen porque se fusionan o se adquieren, no, en principio no se van fuera, sino se quedan en el territorio. Y si se quedan en el territorio, solo veo una justificación, que es porque el conocimiento podemos entender que está todavía ahí, ¿no? Y de hecho, pues en el trabajo que hay sobre Inditex y digamos el sector del calzado, lo que se quiere ver es cómo se sigue contratando personal local, porque justamente es el que aporta ese conocimiento, a lo mejor más tácito, que viene a demostrar que ese conocimiento no está tan, digamos, por ahí, ¿no?, flotando. No sé, una visión, ¿no? Es decir, hay una insistencia en la importancia del territorio, de la proximidad como un mecanismo, un factor de competitividad de las empresas, ¿no? Entonces,
ya que estamos. Cierto, te doy la razón totalmente, pero el conocimiento no es algo estático, no podemos medirlo, diríamos, y pensar conocimiento, depósito de conocimiento o stock de conocimiento hoy, sino que es algo que crece con el tiempo. Hoy sí que está, pero diríamos, si reinventamos el clúster, yo creo que la tendencia es que ese conocimiento no tiene relevo a X años vista. A eso me quería referir.
Bueno, un poco es dar una otra visión. Y después la otra sensación que me da es que damos siempre una fotografía parcial, digamos, de lo que es el clúster, porque, digamos, cuando hacemos intervenciones muy tecnológicas, cuando hablamos de innovación tecnológica, quizá nos perdemos la parte, digamos, de creatividad y de innovación de mercado o de innovación en otros aspectos que no son necesariamente tecnológicos, ¿no? Y ahí a lo mejor, digamos, lo que está pasando es distinto de lo que está pasando con la innovación tecnológica. Es decir, tú comentabas, las empresas finales conceden o se supeditan al proveedor tecnológico para hacer sus innovaciones. Pero, no sé, nosotros lo que hemos estudiado es que justamente las empresas finales innovan, pero sus innovaciones son de mercado, no son tecnológicas. Quiere decir, son conscientes de que no va a haber una diferenciación en términos de tecnología, porque van al mercado intermedio, mercado local, pero pueden diferenciarse, digamos, cara al mercado en políticas distintas, estrategias distintas, que sí que puede haber, o sí que se puede hablar de innovación. Y en ese sentido también eres sabedor, y mejor que yo, de la proliferación de nuevas empresas alrededor de la creatividad, de lo que son servicios avanzados, de lo que son las posibilidades que da, por ejemplo, la impresión digital. Todas esas nuevas empresas que aparecen, como no son empresas manufactureras, muchas veces no las metemos, digamos, dentro de la fotografía, pero que pueden ser también importantes para a dinamizar, ¿no?, el territorio, y que siguen estando en el territorio, simplemente por dar. With respect, I like to ask both Fiorenza and Cristina a question, perhaps it's a academic question, but if you have thought about the change in the structure, in the dynamics of the cluster, the question is, we need another concept, or is it still useful to use the concept of cluster or district? We need another concept, or?
Oh, clearly we need another conference to discuss this, but my impression is the cluster in the world are really dividing into groups. The stable, declining cluster in which the mechanism is just a small cooperation among firms, and very dynamic cluster that become a center of that centralized knowledge, become a center of business. They are developing a kind of network among different countries, so they are covering different countries and so on. In this sense, I think that the new things is not the problem is not to invent a new terminology on cluster, but it is the most difficult issue is to understand really how these new developments are breaking the old model. And I think we had to do research on this. We can really, we try now to, with the new research, to ask actors that are central in this model how they see the future. And only in, say, 20, 30 years we can make some analysis, but as Keynes was saying, in the long term we are dead. So, Cristina.
Well, my idea is that I don't think we should change the name, because the concept is quite, let's say, it's a nice name. It's short, it's not so constraining, so I don't like to be constrained in something. What I think we know to do is that we perhaps we need to address our research looking at different levels. So just moving from the level of individual to the company to the cluster, and maybe other network levels. So for example, I'm studying now a cluster in Brazil which is emerging in a phase of emergency, and it's very useful to understand what's happening, not just focus on the cluster, but look at the community of the professional community of the enologists. And you can understand the development. For me, if you want to understand how the cluster is still developing, you have to follow how the companies interact in the cluster and how the individuals belonging to the company interact with the community of the professional community, because it's just looking at how this different level interact, that you can see how the companies at the end are working and developing over time or dying over time. So I feel comfortable with this definition, but I think we don't have to just look at that level, but we have to keep, let's say, different levels. So look at also the interaction with other clusters, like the example before. So this is my idea in terms of research, approach of research.
¿Alguna pregunta más? ¿Entre el público tenemos? Puedes pasar el micrófono.
A small question. You agree that in Alicante, before the arrival of Inditex, there is a shoes cluster. My question is, after the Inditex installed in the area and starts to produce, we know that still as a cluster, or is a different thing? Maybe it's because of my English. If you prefer, I can.
I understand your English.
Okay.
I don't know. I just had some
No,
vague idea about the cluster.
One moment. In the end, it's because of the slight concept of the question is about the soft definition of a cluster, and in particular with this case, maybe I will understand a bit more about this soft concept for me from my ignorance. Thank you.
No, I think that once a cluster have just one large buyer, clearly the relationship among firms change, because the one buyer, let's say in the text, has a lot of power in comparison with the small firms. And also, this is a negative factor for small firms. But a positive factor is that the big buyer teach those firms to use more modern technology. They improve the logistic. They are they can see new models because they are visible in the cluster. So they know the up-to-date fashion very much first than before. And I don't think that if the cluster has a lot of people, intelligent entrepreneurs and so on, you can also have a kind of second revenge. The second revenge is new firm can grow up and try to have a different relationship with the channels. In Riviera del Brenta, where the big multinational from France entry, then you have also small designer using internet to create a virtual firm and to sell online. They could. It's difficult to say now if they will be so successful, but you have a lot of online firms in footwear in advanced countries like Australia, America, and Canada. Not so much, per se Italian consumers are more traditional, they like small shop and so on. But you can also have a corner in shops, so firms online can sell physical products in other physical shops using the corner model that they are inside the shop. So new organizational firm can be created. So the entry of multinational is not stopping the cluster life in one sense.
Okay. Can I comment? Yes. In that case, there was a study about the typologies of clusters. This still is a cluster, but it's a different kind of cluster compared to the packaging or, I don't know, other cluster that we were mentioning before. And it's called the hub cluster, where there is a company, which is the final producer, that is somehow getting suppliers from many different companies in that area. Like in Toyota, for example, Toyota City is exactly the same thing. Just one final company, which is Toyota, and a large number of first and second, fourth layer suppliers producing for that company. And in that case, what is changing is how the individual suppliers is able to can reach a kind of a competitive advantage, so get some profitability. And so it's not enough to access, for example, to the externalities that they can get in the area, but also they have to try to find a way to manage the bargaining power of the final company. Because it's in this relationship that they can get access to a part of profit, could be very low or could be very interesting, and so on. So it's still a cluster. It's possible to call it a cluster, but it's a different kind. And so how you can get your profitability is changing. It is different compared to how you can get your profitability in other clusters that are more social, let's say, more with a more distributed, let's say,
and
decentralized activity.
Sí, puc donar la meva opinió. El tema, jo crec que també relacionat amb el que ha dit abans Paco, si n'hi ha empreses molt grans dins del districte, i jo crec que si seguim un poc la tradició, sobretot de Becatini, no tant de Porter, d'alguna manera les normes, els principis bàsics del districte se trenquen, perquè ho ha apuntat abans Paco. Evidentment, una gran empresa, la capacitat que té de permetre l'intercanvi de coneixement, tant explícit com tàcit, és molt reduït, perquè no té un interès en aquest intercanvi, perquè és una gran empresa front a menudes. En la pròpia idea, sobretot de districte, s'entén que són empreses menudes, en el sentit que sols fan una fase de tot el procés productiu, no la fan tota, i per tant estan obligades d'alguna manera a una certa cooperació per a completar el cicle. El paper de les institucions també canvia, perquè la política industrial té sentit o no té el mateix sentit front a una gran empresa que una empresa menuda. Una gran empresa ho estem veient en les polítiques industrials a nivell valencià, però també d'altres indrets, realment tenen molt poca incidència en la gran empresa. La capacitat d'influir, de canviar comportaments en la gran empresa és molt reduïda, cosa que no passa si estiguérem parlant d'empreses menudes. Tota la història està per a dir que, òbviament, si entenem, segons Porter, al final, que tens molta raó en dir que és una definició molla o difusa o ambigua, el clúster simplement són empreses que estan interrelacionades, que n'hi ha institucions, agents, i que cooperen i competeixen. Si apliquem això, segurament continuarem parlant de clúster, però és veritat que l'essència, alguns elements bàsics de la idea, tal vegada romàntica, del clúster o del districte, se perden. Aleshores, per això jo plantejava si potser conceptualment necessitem acunyar nous conceptes que repleguen el que per a mi continua sent molt important, que és el paper del territori. Malgrat tot, les empreses estan en el territori i aquesta és la perspectiva que jo crec que pot ser interessant.
¿Alguna pregunta más? ¿Tenemos entre el público? Elías, ¿puedes pasarle el micrófono, por favor? Te oímos desde aquí, yo creo.
It's a question for Professor Boari. Following Luis' thoughts, I'm interested in learning about the leading firms. In your explanation, I'm interested in knowing which characteristics have the successful clusters, this kind of leading firms.
Which one?
The leading firms in your picture, at the top of the picture, there are some like an anchor firms, I think, no?
Yeah.
In successful cases, which characteristics have this kind of leading firms?
Which?
Characteristics.
Characteristics, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because the debate about the smallness of our firms is an eternal debate here. Also the same case in Italy. And these anchor firms need some specific measures or tools to develop all this organization. No?
Yeah, the characteristic in terms of, let's say, demographic characteristic, they are the first companies that were created in the cluster after the World War, and so they have a long history. And they are the first that started to be involved in innovation. So they decided that they were able to do something more, and they were able to follow the possibility to apply, for example, this technology to many different industries. So they are companies that have been always investing a lot in innovation, that have been always in contact with the market. So they are really the final company in the filière. So they are in contact with customers. And from the beginning, they had the customers that were more demanding, because they were the first that started to think to package the things, you know. So, and the fact that you have very demanding customers is something really that very important. So the fact that they are at the interface with the market is really important for them. It's one of the key characteristics of these companies, because actually their innovation is an innovation which is very much pushed by the customers. They are investing a lot in innovation as a consequence. They hire quite, I mean, the kind of people that they hire is quite skilled. They started to be international from the beginning. So now we speak about the Born Global, you know, but those companies were just the first, you know. I saw picture of these companies selling how to pack some additive for the water in United States with small, very creative small cars going around selling this kind of machineries, you know. So they are very companies that are very proactive in the way they, and they started, the one that now are more successful are the companies that have invested more in their suppliers network. So they've been investing in making suppliers growing. So they were not just thinking to them. At the beginning of source, the core attention was cost, you know, be competitive. But then they started to grow. When they started to grow, and they also acquire many companies, like it happens now here in Castiglione. So they started to acquire many competitors. During the 70s, 80s, they bought many companies in the cluster or in areas quite near, and then they went abroad buying other companies. So they are very proactive companies. They also, it's very interesting because in all these companies, you know, they are still, some of them, they are on in the stock exchange, but of course the family is still somehow involved, and they were able to manage the succession very well, and which is not usually the case. You know, in many companies this is a very challenging moment, you know, and so this is the many major characteristics, I'd say.
I would like to add that for my experience, leading firms are emerging in all clusters. So this is not a specific phenomenon of Castiglione or of Sassuolo. If you take other districts, you only see that there are no more equal firms competing. You have leading and small firms which found niches with specific products or with specific offering to large firms of products or activities. So this is because globalization. Nowadays, globalization implies that firms to stay on the market must be larger. To serve far distance clients, to access knowledge, they need to have a certain size that before was not. When clusters were covered within the niche of the national market, that was not so important. But nowadays, commerce is still a global activities and Trump does not broke all exchange. Our firms have to compete with Indian, with Chinese, with Brazilian, so they have to be very good because they are in areas where costs are higher. So they support a higher cost of labor, higher cost of services. So to compete with low-cost firms, they need to be jolly good. And so the size is really an important now features. So clearly all policy that are helping firms to become larger are benefiting and are important.
Pues ya se nos ha hecho la hora y la verdad es que hemos mantenido una charla de lo más animada sobre el clúster, que no pensaba yo que nos iba a dar para tanto. Y quería dar las gracias a sus intervenciones, a las intervenciones de Cristina, de Fiorenza y de Paco y de Xavier, que también han aportado sus opiniones personales. Y muchísimas gracias a todos por participar.